Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. The day before yesterday was the 13th anniversary of the passing of my best friend from college, Jeremy David McIntyre. Jeremy was a highly accomplished youth sailor, an honorable mention All-American collegiate sailor, and he ran a competitive campaign to sail in the 1996 Olympic Games. He died when he was backcountry skiing in Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada, and a small avalanche swept him into a tree, which struck him in the heart and killed him instantly. He was 26 years old. Jeremy was an incredible man who made a tremendous impact on me and many other people who were his friends and family members when he was alive, while he was alive. And his spirit has continued to have a major effect on many of us after his death. He was a rare, special individual who was extremely loving toward everyone he knew and loved life to the fullest with an amazing, infectious enthusiasm for whatever he was doing, whether it was sailing, skiing, hiking, singing, or just spending time with friends and family. Jeremy was often seen with an enormous smile that stretched from ear to ear. A couple of days after receiving the news of Jeremy's tragic death, I flew out to Seattle, where he had been living, to be with his friends and relatives for the memorial service. At that service, Jeremy's younger sister, Corey, told me a truly miraculous story that has dramatically altered my outlook on life. The day that Jeremy died, he was skiing with his friend Rob Moss in a part of Banff called Paradise Valley. After the avalanche, Rob tried to resuscitate Jeremy using CPR for more than 45 minutes. But when he realized that he could not revive him, he skied down to a park ranger station and then went back up the mountain with a couple of officers from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. By the time that they had brought Jeremy's body down, it was around 8 o'clock p.m. in Alberta, which was around 10 o'clock p.m. in South Carolina, where Jeremy's parents were living. The authorities decided to wait until the morning to notify Jeremy's parents, Barbara and David, rather than send a police officer to their house to inform them of the tragic news so late at night. At that time, Corey was a student at an art school in Tennessee. She had been studying the lives of great masters and had learned that many of them, such as Monet, Renoir, and Picasso, would experience periods of intense inspiration, during which they would paint for days on end without sleeping or eating. Corey had never felt that type of inspiration before, and she had been longing to experience it for herself. The night that Jeremy died, Corey felt that sense of inspiration for the first time. She had been working on small canvases, maybe 12 inches by 16 inches or so, and had been painting landscapes and cityscapes using light colors. That night, before Corey had heard about her brother's death, she got out a very large canvas for the first time ever, which may have been 30 inches by 36 inches or so, and painted a picture in all greens, blues, and purples, which were Jeremy's favorite colors. The picture that she painted was of an angel. That was the first time that Corey had ever painted a picture of an angel or anything with a religious theme. Corey stayed up painting all night long, and she was still working on the painting when her mother called her in the morning to tell her that her brother had died in an accident. Corey told us at the memorial service that she knew immediately that Jeremy had been with her all through the night. There are many other stories from before and after Jeremy's death that have led many of his friends and relatives to believe that Jeremy's spirit lives on in a peaceful heavenly abode. Jeremy told one of his best friends, Kurt Hurtado, that he thought he must be crazy to be buying a radio transmitter that would send out signals in case he was buried in an avalanche. And from the way he said that, Kurt had a strong feeling that Jeremy was telling him that he had a premonition that he was not going to survive the backcountry skiing expedition that he had planned. Kurt replied to him by saying, "No, you can't think that way," trying to convince him to be more optimistic. Also, just before his ski trip to Banff, Jeremy told another of his closest friends, Mark Felton, "I dreamed of going to Stanford, and I did that. And I dreamed of doing an Olympic campaign, and I did that. And I dreamed of hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, and I did that. And now I've lived all of my dreams, and I don't know what to do." Again, Mark had a powerful feeling that Jeremy was telling him that the end of his life was near, and told him, "No, don't think like that. You should just think of some more dreams." After Jeremy's death, there have been many stories of people feeling his presence in their lives in different ways. One of my favorite stories involves two of Jeremy's friends from college sailing, Jago McLeod, who also sailed with Jeremy in his Olympic campaign, and Nikki Adamson. Jago and Nikki were both living in Santa Cruz a few years after Jeremy died, and they heard that the North American Championships for a two-person sailboat called a Vanguard 15 were being held in San Francisco Bay. Normally, the ideal combined weight of a two-person crew in a Vanguard 15 is about 275 pounds, and Nikki and Jago together made a very heavy boat, with a combined weight of more than 300 pounds. But it is advantageous to have a heavier crew weight in heavy winds, and since it is often very windy in San Francisco Bay, Nikki and Jago decided to enter the regatta and thought they might do well if there were heavy air. The first day of the regatta, the winds in the bay were uncharacteristically light, and Nikki and Jago were not doing well at all, as they were overweight for those conditions. And the second day started out with light air as well, and Nikki and Jago again were not getting the top finishes for which they had hoped. Jago said to Nikki, "What we need now is a Jeremy puff," because Jeremy was notorious for being able to summon the wind when he needed it to win races. Just at that moment, Nikki, who was sitting on the other side of the boat, said to Jago, "Dude, look behind you." And there, rolling into the bay, under the Golden Gate Bridge, was an enormous billowing breeze, clearly visible by the darkened ripples and waves it was creating on the water. The heavy breeze filled in soon after that, and it started blowing 20 to 25 knots, ideal conditions for Jago and Nikki's boat. They won the next race, and then won several more races that day. The third and final day of the regatta, they continued winning race after race, and by the last race of the day, they were in second place, trailing the leaders by 5 points. This meant that in order to win the North American Championships, Nikki and Jago would not only have to beat the leading boat, they would have to finish at least 5 places ahead of them. A difficult feat to accomplish, since the leaders were often finishing in the top 3. Through an incredible coincidence of breeze changes and strategic conditions, which are difficult to explain concisely to people who are not familiar with sailboat racing, Nikki and Jago were actually able to force the boat that had been winning the regatta to sail out of their way and sail a longer course to the finish than would have been ideal. And Jago and Nikki beat them by exactly 5 places and won the North American Championships, winning a tie in total points scored because they had more first place finishes. Then, at the end of the day, after Jago and Nikki had loaded all of their gear into their van for their drive south to Santa Cruz, Jago turned on the ignition in the van. The radio came on, and a song they knew well had just started. The first words that they heard were, "Jeremiah was a bullfrog, was a good friend of mine," from Joy to the World, which was one of Jeremy's favorite songs. In my own experience, I've had numerous occasions in which I have felt that Jeremy's spirit was with me, especially when I'm out sailing or when I am really thinking about my friend. Some of these times there have been visible signs in the physical world, and other times it is simply clear that Jeremy is with me from my internal emotional experience. Sometimes when I'm on a road trip or just feel like sharing in Jeremy's company, I will clear off the passenger seat of my pickup truck and clear up the floor on the passenger side as well, so that Jeremy's invisible body may have a comfortable place to sit. But of all the experiences in which I have felt Jeremy's spirit communicating with me, there is one which stands out in my mind as having had the greatest impact on me. A year after Jeremy's death, his parents put together a party and invited many of his relatives and good friends to a ski cabin for a weekend in Stevens Pass, Washington. One evening at this gathering, I was riding up a chairlift with Jeremy's mother, and I was really thinking about Jeremy and feeling his presence with us. The sun had just set, and we could see beautiful pink, orange, and purple colors on the snow-covered mountains behind us as we were riding up the lift. I had a very clear feeling at that moment that Jeremy's death and the miraculous sign that he had shown to his sister and that she had shared with all of us was in fact proof that there is a heaven, and that a good saintly man, Jeremy, was there and truly was an angel now, looking over all of us. In that moment, I felt a great sense of peace, and also a feeling of tremendous wonder and awe. I became keenly aware of my own mortality right after Jeremy died, and that awareness has led me on a spiritual path in which I have explored different traditions and ultimately become an active member of the Episcopal Church, the same church to which Jeremy, a follower of Jesus himself, belonged. He often wore a sweatshirt with the word Episcopal emblazoned on the front, the name of the high school he had attended in South Carolina. What did Jeremy's incredible life and the miraculous stories surrounding the life of his spirit after his physical death tell us about our own lives and how we interact with one another? For me, one thing I take away from Jeremy's story is that it was because Jeremy was such a kind, loving, and compassionate person while he was alive on earth that he is so fondly remembered by everyone whose lives he touched. So I strive to be more like Jeremy, trying to be as kind and warm as possible to my friends and family members, and taking the opportunity to go sailing and spend time in nature whenever I can, and enjoy life to the fullest in every moment. I also believe that Jeremy's story tells us that those of us who have lost dearly beloved friends or relatives can in fact be in communication and contact with their spirits, if we can open ourselves to receive their presence in our lives. I believe that Jeremy is one of my guardian angels now, along with my grandmother, Hazel Barbara Pollard. And just as Clarence, angel second class, came down from heaven to help George Bailey in his moment of despair in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, after many people prayed to God and asked him to help George, I believe that our friends and relatives on the other side will respond if we ask them humbly in prayer to be with us and watch over us. Amen.